Every single lender that this client talked to told her the exact same thing, 25% down on both properties. That's just how investment property loans work. We told her something different, and she ended up closing on 2 properties almost at the same exact time. This is the kind of deal that I love breaking down because it shows you exactly why the right lender doesn't just process your loan, they're actually engineering your whole strategy. Welcome back to another deal of the week. If you are new here, my name is Ricardo Carrillo. I'm the founder of RC Lending Advisors. We're a nationwide mortgage lending company that helps clients all across the entire US, including Puerto Rico, get financing for both residential and commercial deals. Whether you're buying your very first home or you're scaling your real estate portfolio, my team and I will walk you through the entire process from A to Z. The whole point of these videos is to show you the real deals with real numbers about real clients and exactly how they're structured so that you can understand what's actually possible when you do this the right way. So here's the setup. My clients are a married couple. They're first-time real estate investors, not first-time home buyers, but just first-time real estate investors. And they had a clear goal. They wanted to buy 2 properties, build a rental portfolio, and start generating rental income from their real estate. It's a smart plan, and they wanted to move on both of the deals that they were looking at almost together. Now, when you're trying to do this, the financing side of things can get complicated very fast, and this is where every other lender that they actually spoke to ended up shutting them down. The feedback was pretty consistent across the board. It's an investment property, you're gonna need 25% down, both of them. And while that's not wrong, it's ultimately the standard for most conventional investment loans. Banks are going to want you to give 20 to 25% down. Standard is not necessarily the only option. And this is exactly what separates a loan officer who just understands guidelines from a loan officer who understands how to structure deals. Here's what we saw that every single other lender had missed. The property that they were looking at, which is a condo in Salt Lake City, qualified to be structured as what we would call a second home, not an investment property. And that one classification will change this entire deal. It's what changed this entire deal. And let me explain why it matters so much. When you finance a property as a conventional investment loan or investment property, you're typically looking at a 15 to 25% down payment. And the rates are priced at a premium because the bank is seeing it as higher risk. You're not living there. But a second home, which is a property that you personally own, you also plan to use it sometimes, even if you can rent it out most of the year, it gets treated completely different. You put as little as 10% down, and the rate that you get is sometimes lower than what you would find on investment properties. This is same clients, same property, just a completely different loan structure so that she didn't need to use all her money on just this one deal. Now, this isn't going to work for every single property in every single situation. It's definitely case by case, but it's by far my favorite program to use because this property legitimately qualified as a second home under those guidelines. We want to make sure that it's not subject to a mandatory rental pool. We want to make sure that the client has enough reasonable reason to actually occupy the property, like they want to genuinely use it. And then it also has to be suitable for year-round use, meaning you have to have access to the property year-round. And all of those boxes got checked. So the second home classification worked, and it's what I told the client we needed to do. So by structuring this deal as a second home, we freed up a bunch of their capital. And so instead of putting 25% down on the first property and 25% down on the other property, we did 10% on one and 15% on the other, which was the entire 25% she would have tied up into one property before they had even started generating rental income. We ended up using that 10% down and we kept the rest available for this second deal. And this is what I like to call like a full portfolio strategy, not just somebody who's originating and processing your loan. Let's jump through the numbers because that's what's the most important here. The purchase price was $383,000 and the property had actually appraised for $390,000. So they came in just under the appraised value for the purchase. That's over $6,000 in just instant equity that they got at closing, which is awesome. The loan was $307,000, so $307K. And we put them in a 10-year interest-only, non-conventional loan. We locked it in at a 7.3% interest rate. But I want to explain why interest-only was the better structure here, instead of a standard fully amortizing loan where the payment and interest, principal and interest is covered from day one. When you do an interest-only loan, the first 10 years that you pay are just the interest on the loan and just the interest that accrues in that month. You're not required to pay down the principal, but you have the option to do so. And by doing this, the payment's actually lower, which means that you have more cash flow in your pocket every single month. And for first-time investors like these, who are also going to be now managing 2 properties at the same exact time, learning the operational side of being a landlord, and then also making sure that the numbers will work, having a cash flow cushion in early years wasn't really a luxury. It was more of a thing of a strategy that we wanted to put in place so that they could have lower monthly payments. So for the first 10 years, $2,100 was the monthly payment, and it was just, which included principal and interest, but interest was just $1,800. We had HOA of $170, property taxes at $180, and then later, once the loan restructures and is recast into that fully amortizing loan, it goes up to $2,600 a month. But by that point, the property's already seasoned. They've had it for a long time. Rents have already increased. They have the option to refinance, sell it, or turn it into a different program. There's options there, and ultimately, it's a better strategy for people like this. But I want to talk about how we ended up getting these clients to qualify, because it was a little bit of a challenge at the beginning. Only the client's husband was working, and then the wife was not employed, which means that all of the income was basically running through just one person. Ultimately, that affects the debt to income ratio calculation and how the bank's going to look at your loan overall. But we ended up building the structure that actually worked fundamentally. And for funds to close, the client was also using the down payment, they had down payment plus cash to close, but we were doing it from 2 different sources. One was a home equity line, the other one was retirement accounts. And a combination of those things can make it a little bit tricky because the bank's going to ask for added layers. When you use a home equity line, you have to properly disclose the money that you're getting, where it's coming from, how we're providing that to the bank. Same with retirement accounts. You have to show, where's the statement of withdrawals, what are the terms of the withdrawal, and there's different paperwork. But we ended up getting through all of that ahead of time, and we ended up having a super clean file for our underwriters. And then there was seller credits. So we negotiated $24,000 in seller credits to be paid at closing for our client to cover interest rates and other expenses. And the standard move when you have seller credits is really just to apply them all towards closing costs to reduce the cash to close. Instead, we took a different approach and we used the full $24,000 that we had strategically to just buy down the interest rate. So we were able to reduce the interest rate on the loan, which was overall lowering the payment over the life of the loan. And for a buy and hold investor like this, who's thinking about 10 years of cash flow for the first 10 years while it's interest only, a buy down on the rate was a much smarter play for them long term than just saving some money at cash to, for cash to close. So total closing costs were at 14 grand, and cash to close ended up around 73K. Now, she's a real estate investor. She has 2 properties. We structured them the right way. We still got to reserve capital. We didn't have to use all of that money to buy these 2 deals. But the takeaway that I really want you to walk away with is that when every other lender is telling you that there's only one way to do something, go get a second opinion from somebody who actually knows what they're doing and knows the full range of what is actually available for you. The guidelines have way more flexibility in them than most loan officers are willing to explore, and than most loan officers even understand. So if this is something that you want to explore and you're curious about it, go to rclending.co. You can connect with my team and I. You can follow me on Instagram at Richie the Lender. And if you haven't seen my other Deal of the Week videos, make sure that you check those out either here or here. And I will see you in the next Deal of the Week.